is there one thing that you would like, me to focus on so that, people really get a key takeaway? And what she said absolutely stunned me. And it's so important to realize this. She said, Paul, what I'd really like you to talk about is that we often think that when we give, the beneficiaries are the people to whom we're giving. Right? That's a natural level of thought. But she said, in reality, we need to understand that we are the beneficiaries by having that privilege to be able to do it. And I think that's an interesting flip on it as well.
Hello and welcome to the Money Matters podcast. I am PJ Patterson, the founder and CEO of Intrepid Wealth, and I am joined today by two very special people who I've known for, probably 8 or 9 years now, I think. And for whom I credit the journey that I've been on as a business owner and as an individual around not just charitable giving, but impactful giving and purpose-led driven giving, trying to get that out of my mouth. And we're going to talk about all of that today. And so Paul, Dunn, Masami, Sato, welcome to the Money Matters podcast.
Welcome. And I think, I love the title of it, Money Matters, but I actually think PJ matters. And so we are just so thrilled. And isn't it amazing that we can be here in Tokyo today? You can be there in Sydney, and yet connecting as if we're in the same room. And that, of course, applies to all of the people joining us now. So thank you for joining us as well.
Yes, it is an amazing thing, technology. I suppose the whole COVID thing taught us that we can actually be anywhere and still connect, even though it may not be in person, but we can be just as we are now, seemingly very close and connected, and about to have a great conversation about probably all of our lives, really, at the end of the day. But let's kick off with, for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you're all about, Masami, let's kick it off with you. Tell us who you are and start with the journey of B1G1.
So people who are listening may be wondering what this B1G1,
They may be.
So I'm the founder of a global initiative called B1G1. Initially, the idea came from the concept of imagine what if every time something good happens in your business, in businesses around the world, something great happened in the world. So B1G1 stood for almost the idea of buy one, give one, right? When you enjoy a cup of coffee, a child receives access to water, or every time you read an interesting book and learn something great, a child receives education or a tree gets planted. What if we all worked together to make our world a better place? So it started in 2007. I used to be in Australia running a business, and that was, the origin story, part of the origin story of B1G1. But today, B1G1 is a global initiative working with thousands of businesses, and those businesses have created together 395 million impacts. So today, the impact counter, collective one, ticked to 395 million. And PJ, many of the impacts created and counted in this impact, it's yours. So Thank you so much for having us here today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking about the goal that I've set for myself, which, we were just at the conference in Bali, and one of the takeaways I had was to set a goal, don't necessarily put a time frame on it, but set a goal of a number of impacts I want to create. So I set that goal at 2 million, which is double from sort of where I am right now, which is a little bit over 1 million. And I think I looked at my website this morning and it said I was about 67% of the way to the 2 million. And so I'm making every effort to get there. I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But it's certainly something that we're inspired to do at Intrepid, and bringing our clients along on that journey too, which is, I think, also something we'll talk about today, about how business can make impacts and be purpose-driven. But before we do that, Paul, you've been around in Australia for a long time in business, now with B1G1. tell us who you are and a bit of your story.
Thank you so much, PJ, again. And by the way, you are at 1,144,888
There you
impacts
go. The live
as we
update.
speak. Yeah, I think if there was one word that you would describe me as, it would be lucky. I mean, my entire life has been one of just opportunities just being there and then seizing them, as it were. And so one of those was way back before you were born, almost, when I was headhunted from the United Kingdom and got to be, I mean, how lucky is this? This just gives you one sort of instance of it, and being one of the first 10 in Hewlett Packard in Australia, way back when. And, to have that grounding with people like Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard was just extraordinary. And that kind of thing about connecting just went on through my life. And then, of course, as Masami mentioned, in 2007, we met. Well, actually, we met in 2006, but in 2007, Masami sat with me and said what she said earlier on with that question, which is, what if every time business was done, what if we could create something where every time business was done, something great happened in the world? And I remember saying, oh, wow, can I be your mentor for the rest of your life, when she said that? And it is such a life-changing idea, this whole idea that, when something happens, whatever it is, we'll make sure something great happens. And I remember when I spoke with you, I was there doing a session in Sydney, and I had to rush off, you may remember, to the airport. And you had a little note that said, call me. And I said, oh, PJ, let me take a moment to explain what we're talking about. And I remember exactly what you said, which was, Paul, I got it at hello.
Yes,
And to have you as part of this, and as a result of that, all of the people that you're connected with and so on, is a very special. So yes, very lucky, but at the same time very privileged to be able to connect in with people like you and all of the other wonderful members of B1G1 around the world.
Thank you, and I love that origin story about how I came to know B1G1, and I do remember that very well. It was just, I mean, it's like a bell was rung when you were talking about B1G1, and I just went, this is it, right? This is the thing that I had been looking for. So before we get into that, Masami, tell us a bit more about that origin story about B1G1. I think Paul's done a great job of articulating that, but I'd love to hear it from you as well, like that whole start of the idea of B1G1, maybe even a bit of background into even how this idea came to you, and tell us a bit about that.
Well, actually, going back about 30 years ago, I was a backpacker, traveling with very little means. And that's when I experienced something remarkable about this world, for the first time, that there are so many places. I met some of the most generous people, and those people often had very little. But they seems to be smiling, and they seems to be very kind. And then because I was just so vulnerable, without the ability to be able to speak the language in those countries I visited. So it was an amazing time. But then at the same time, I also met with people who had more but didn't seem to be so fulfilled, right? So I questioned, like, why are we doing what we are doing everywhere around the world? But what happened then years later, when I became a mom, and at that time, I happened to be living in New Zealand, something changed for me because, through that backpacking time, so when I saw people who had very little, or children who couldn't go to school, or I didn't know how to help because I didn't have a lot. And I was a small person. So I kept saying to myself, like, things are as they are. But when I had my daughter, and I felt this compelling feeling of the commitment and responsibility that I had, and honor, right, that I could do something for this little child. I promised to myself that I would do everything in my power to make sure, that she will grow up safe, healthy, and happy. But then at the same time, I realized that she was a lucky one by chance. But there are so many other kids who weren't as lucky. And instead of saying I was too small to do anything, at that time I decided that I had to do something more than just taking care of my own family. So that's when I became an entrepreneur and started my very first business 25 years ago with a 3-month-old baby on my back. And that tiny little food business, which I started because I was passionate about food. For me, food brought the people together. When I couldn't speak the language, food was the way I communicated through. So my food business evolved, and eventually I came to Australia. And then I had this frozen meal company, which was distributing packaged organic gluten-free meals to many stores across different states in Australia. So 5 years of hard work as an entrepreneur resulted in gradual growth. But then every single day, I was so busy, and we always had things to do and other priorities. So then I paused for a moment and I thought at that time, well, I started this business because I wanted to make a difference and contribute and help people and children. But on the day to day, I felt like that one day was too far. One day when we are bigger, one day when we have more time, we would do something. And that one day wasn't coming. Then I thought, what if instead of trying to do big things one day, what if we did small things every day? And then suddenly everything transformed for me. And that was the origin story of B1G1, because now we do what we do to make it possible for all kinds of businesses to exercise this everyday thinking, moving from one day we do good to today and every day we make positive things happen in the world.
Yes. And I think for me, that was the moment of realization, was that it's the power of small. You use that phrase a lot. And Paul, do you think when you're having conversations with businesses about B1G1 and about that very thing that Masami was just talking about, do people, do they have the same reaction that I had? Do they go, oh, I get it now. Like, I don't have to wait until I'm a billionaire. I don't have to wait until I make, $10 million of profit or whatever to do something good. And that's maybe way off in the future, may never happen. I can actually do something today, and something small but impactful.
Yeah.
Take it from there.
I was thinking about that this morning, actually, when thinking about chatting with you, and I realized that for example, when you said on the phone, I got it at hello. Right, there are moments where in our lives, as you're listening to this, for example, there are moments when we go, oh, that's really good. But what actually happens, and I think in these times that we're in now, we tend to not trust ourselves somehow. There's this kind of uncertainty in decisions and stuff like that. Whereas if you look at all the things we've just been talking about now, it's I got it at hello. Let's do this, as it were, and that's why Masami's whole thing about let's not wait for one day, because the reality is that one day never comes. And if you think about that, there are so many things on the other side of doing that thing today that you really should be doing. And so that's what I think B1G1 opens up. And of course, you're opening up the same thing in terms of, the financial performance of families and so on, and the clients that you serve, So yeah, I think there's a nice sort of triumvirate, if that's the word, going on here with really interesting little leads, little flags all the way along that we're all doing. And as a result, very thrilled and privileged to be making a difference as we do it.
Well, let's talk about that, making a difference, and what that looks like, just to give listeners a little bit more, meat on the bone, as it were. So one of the things with B1G1 is you are aligned to these things called the Sustainable Development Goals, and there's 17 of them, right? And they all have a different focus. One of them that I'm passionate about is clean water, right? It still astounds me that here we are in 2026 with all the technology and everything else we have in this world, and yet there's still people around the world who do not have access to clean water. It just, I just can't believe that. But others are
730
education.
million of them as we're speaking. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
which is, just mind-boggling that that's happening. Then there's education, right, which is a huge part of people's ability to help themselves even, right? And unfortunately, as we know, through some of the projects that I support as well, unfortunately, families have to send their children to work because they have to help support the families in some of these places around the world. And so education is a big one. What are some of the goals that you have found that you have gravitated to over the years? Like, do you have a favorite or a couple favorites?
Well, I like you, education and water. What I tend to look at is and in B1G1 now there are 484 different projects, right? Which is like, oh my gosh, there's this thing. But what I tend to think of is like you, which is there are so many things that we take for granted. People watching us now, with us now, can just go turn on a tap. And oh, look at that. There's water. And it's generally speaking pure. It's, you did not have to walk as maybe even a 12-year-old girl, have to walk with your mother for an hour with an empty big can on your head, go down to a polluted water, fill the thing, and 20 liters of water, by the way, weighs 20 kilograms, and then put that on your head and then walk back another hour and then get a pill and put the pill in the water so that it's not brown anymore, it's at least white. And yet you and I can go, oh, look at that, there it is.
Yeah.
And if you think about that for a minute, you think about the ramifications of that. What could that young 12-year-old girl be doing in those 2 hours? And the answer is they could be going to school, right? For example, and then getting educated and all of those sorts of things that we take for granted. So for me, I'm like you. I think I look at, what are we so privileged to have that others miss out on? And then if by our tiny actions we can make a change in that. And one of the things that I was sitting, I think you were in the room at the time, it was last year in Sydney, where Masami was talking and we were listening to her, and she had this slide up, and the slide talked about the power of small, right? It was the power of small. And then she said, but when you think about it, we can't be sustainable by lifting up one person. We can't, or lifting up ourselves. We have to lift up everyone. And then you may remember the slide changed from the power of small to the power of all. And so these tiny little things mean that we all can be involved in making these impacts which literally change people's lives. One of the most interesting things to think about is, if you think about the story I just told you about water, and then you think about the ripple effect of that. Oh, look at that. They were just able to go there and get water, so they didn't have to do this and this and this. So then they could do something else, and that something else gets, built on as well. So yeah, it's I'm like you. I'm not sure what Masami has, but I suspect it's somewhat of the same.
Well, let's hear it from Masami. Do you have any particular goal or goals that you sort of gravitate to?
Yeah, so PJ, the reason when we saw the global goals in the structure, we felt excited by that was not because, it's a good, strategy or structure, but it's actually looked at all of the global issues as interconnected issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not one thing or the other. Because water flows into, the ability for people to grow food, and then also because without the water, even in the land that people have in rural area, they cannot grow food, even though they have vast land. So the moment you bring water, then there is economic development that leads to increase the quality of education in the community because children actually can access then the education. And so education is so important and powerful because when children grow up having the access to right kind of values and the leadership and understanding of what they can do in their life and stay in their communities to create the prosperity, then that's very powerful. And the income generating opportunity where women can start a business and the women are more likely actually to put the money back into kids' education and in the community. So there are like lots of innovative ways to solve different challenges. And the best way to solve those challenges are to empower the community to actually come up with the way to uplift themselves. And and then, things like a sustainability issue. Yes, we have to plant more trees and protect the existing land. And that requires us to also prevent fire, or that also requires us to look at the plastic issues. How do we deal with the plastic issues? And there are so many innovative ways that we've seen that these issues become opportunities. But often these micro acts of contribution allows us to mobilize this innovative idea into actual reality. And so all the parts we get to play as people and businesses and doing the little things that we believe and we doing it together have so much like a possibility and a potential. So that's why I think the global goal, all of that are very important. And but also the beginning of that can be unlocked with tiny micro contribution, like giving one person access to water for one day. And it takes very little that all of us can do.
Yeah, I love that
And I
answer.
think
They're all related.
And I think PJ too, it's kind of interesting as you've been talking, and it's so lovely to have this opportunity to do it. We, in this journey, there are moments where you go, oh, that's a real truth that we miss. And I remember one of them where I was being introduced by a 14-year-old person to 400 people, 400 school kids. And this particular person, her name is Jess, she had just been on a B1G1 study tour and seen, all the things that were happening and stuff. And so I said to Jess, before we get on and, you introduce me, is there one thing that you would like, me to focus on so that, people really get a key takeaway? And what she said absolutely stunned me. And it's so important to realize this. She said, Paul, what I'd really like you to talk about is that we often think that when we give, the beneficiaries are the people to whom we're giving. Right? That's a natural level of thought. But she said, in reality, we need to understand that we are the beneficiaries by having that privilege to be able to do it. And I think that's an interesting flip on it as well.
It is an interesting flip on it, and it's funny you say that because I do. When I started this whole journey, I felt extremely privileged to give every month to the projects that I chose to support, knowing that I may never meet these people that I'm helping in one way or another, but knowing that on the other side of the world that someone is able to access clean water, or that I provided a microloan to someone in Africa, for example, or a lady in Africa, or a sewing machine to someone in India, a woman in India. And the impact of that would be felt by their entire community and family. That's pretty cool, to know that. And so, yeah, my well gets, filled right up when I come back to what it is that I'm able to do through my business through B1G1. So it's pretty astounding. That was a little monologue there, but it's important that businesses in particular, and I do want to talk about that at some point, about how businesses can integrate giving into their business and be impactful with what they do. But before we do that, I want to come back to, because I was going to ask about the study tours. So Masami, when you do a lot of the study tours and traveling around, when you're doing that and you're going out around the world and visiting projects and communities, how does it, can you describe the feeling? Can you just describe what it's like to be there on the ground and doing a project or helping with a project and what you see? Just describe it, the sounds, the feelings, the smells even of the whole thing. Like, how do you feel about it? Walk us through something recently maybe that you've done.
Well, study tour is called a study tour for interesting reason. When we did very first visit to a program that we worked with, years ago, I observed something interesting that, the people who are waiting for a group of us to come were very conscious that here's this group of people coming from foreign countries and they were the donors, right? Like, so they put up like a great ceremony with guest of honor and and then they were waiting to thank us. And then after that first visit, I realized that we had to do something different with our study tours. And then from then on, everything changed because the way we bring the group to visit the project is never that we are going to help or donate, or that it is that we are going to experience and learn from people.
Yeah.
And then the people waiting for us are waiting for us, knowing that here is a group of people coming because they are very curious about what they are doing and they want to learn from you. And the great things that they're making happen. And when the framing change and the connection change, then something amazing happen because we become just human beings to experience the goodness that we can have together. And then when people feel that they have something to offer, because if we remove who are the givers, who are receivers, suddenly we are all coming together to make things better, for all of us. And that spirit of connection, and then open questions and openness to experience everything together, that is the magic of a study tour. And then when business owners or leaders or even team members come on these tours, they initially expect probably something, right? Like they see how the project are doing good work, and that's true. But what people take away is much more profound than that. People's lives are changed by that connection. So I wouldn't be able to describe in words what the study tour brings exactly, but PJ, I think these experiences transform because when we see that the world is an extension of our own family. Oof. And our privilege, all of us have to show up for that family, then the meaning of our life and our business changes.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful line, and you just as you're talking about it, Masami, I was there, if you know what I mean, in the study tour environment, and it's so good. And the funny thing is, PJ, I don't think I've ever said this before, and that is when you're there with curiosity and everything else, you're not, the traditional kind of way of thinking about it is, oh, we're the donors, you're the receivers, right? That's the traditional way of thinking about it. But on the B1G1 study tour, it's like, oh, we're human beings together, and privileged to be sharing that experience together. Like building mud huts together is is so much fun, and to see and share in the faces, not just of the people who we would normally think of as the receivers, but to look around at the B1G1 members who are there and realize what they're going through at the same time. It's just an amazing coming together that changes lives. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I had the I don't know if you remember this, but over the years I'm very privileged to be able to go and travel to various locations around the world for conferences. And a few years ago, this is probably pre-COVID, I was traveling a little bit in Asia, And I reached out and I said, well, I'm going to these places. And I think it was in Hanoi. And I said, can you put me in touch with, one of the worthy causes? And because I'd like to go visit them and introduce myself and just see what's going on. It was like my own little mini study tour, if you will. And I remember going and visiting one of the charities there, one of the organizations, Blue Dragon in
Blue
Hanoi.
Dragon is amazing,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Amazing, yep. And getting a tour and seeing all the kids and stuff. And I came away from that, and I always do now, that, and I think I said this at our recent conference, it is that going and doing that for me reinvigorates the fact that I have a lot of work to do. And I have to come back to my wonderful life and the privilege that I've been given by my parents and opportunities in Australia and stuff, and to, I guess, work harder and make more impacts, right? Because of what I experience. And again, that, you were talking about earlier about how oftentimes we as givers get more than maybe we think, we're giving to the receiver or whatever. Like, we get more. And that's how I feel. Every time I do that, I'm like, I seem to walk away from this thinking that I've received even more. So I love doing that. It's actually something that I have to get back to.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioned Blue Dragon. I remember during COVID that the kids at Blue Dragon, and by the way, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's an amazing thing where they're taking kids who've been sex trafficked and all of that kind of stuff. But what's so interesting, PJ, and you would have noticed it, right? The moment you go in, there's a 3-letter word that just radiates all around. And that 3-letter word is joy. Right? It's just amazing how that comes up. And I remember during COVID, the people at Blue Dragon said, oh, we would love to do something like a virtual study tour. And they said, why don't we get the kids? Or the kids actually said, why don't we show people how to make Vietnamese spring rolls? And so they sent all these recipes around for everyone, and they're making it. And it was so interesting that the people in Australia in particular who were part of that, just on Zoom at the time, looking at the kids, and we got so many notes which said, and this I think is so important, when they said, oh, thank you for doing that, because I brought my kids to see that. And that's a lasting impression, and so it's this whole legacy that we're able to build, when you get that this is actually not about us, but it's all of the things we're doing for the generations that follow us.
Yeah.
And thinking about that gives you that sense of, oh, I'm here for a reason,
Yes. Do you think that, and let's actually talk about that, because businesses, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but I think one of your ideas or philosophies or driving things with B1G1 is that business, and small business in particular, because the world is mostly made up of small businesses, are the ones that are going to change the world in this regard. Yeah. And so how can, if you just look at the headlines today, you would sit back and you would think, how on earth can I do anything to change anything in this world? And I guess if you think about it that way, then you never will be able to change anything. So how do we reframe that? How do we reframe that, right? The B1G1 story and what this is all about. How is that reframed with what we're doing through B1G1, so that power of small and what we can do with small impacts, take it from there, run with that idea and share with the people that would be listening to this who are business people who can say, wow, I get it. I can make a small impact.
And I know that Masami has got some magical stuff that she might want to say on that, but let me just put my little piece in. As you were talking about that, I want to tell you what I was seeing, and what I was seeing was a stretch of water. I saw it, and then I saw you, PJ, and all the other B1G1 members around the world just go plop, and of course when you get that plop, you get that ripple, right? And so when you think about that, it's just amazing the impact that something small can have, and we tend to forget that. We think, oh, like getting back to what Masami was saying before, sometimes we think, oh, one day when I'm this, whatever that is, and then recognizing that it never comes, but we all can make that little drop. Masami, I'm sure you've got some insights on that.
Well, actually, we know that our world is driven by business activities, right? And yes, politicians can make certain decisions or act on certain
Can't they
issues,
just?
but our everyday, forget about all these other things that we feel we cannot control, but every day our life is surrounded by all these activities in our life. And all the things, that's around us is already happening by those businesses around the world. And our economy is still driven primarily by SMEs, even though on the news we notice what the big companies are doing. And the global challenges cannot be solved by one or two powerful people saying this is the way to solve the challenge. We cannot do that. It requires all of us to participate in what the better world looks like, and then to make things happen on a day-to-day basis. So changing the world requires our habit to change every day. And then changing our habit requires our businesses to also change. And the businesses are run by leaders. And leaders can make different choices and decisions every day. And when they start exercising different ideas and values in their everyday decisions and do it in masses, then that's when the world can change beyond all the differences. I used to think we are different because we looked different, spoke different languages, had different religions and everything. But when you visit some of the most remote communities in different parts of the world, we see how businesses are getting through to the lives of people in those places as well, very quietly. So if businesses exercise different actions and collectively work together, then we really can change our world. But the question is understanding how can each of us understand the power we actually have to cast our vote for a better world as a customer, choosing companies to work with, but also as leaders and a parent to have a different kind of conversations and decisions happening every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love
So
that.
true. So true.
I love that. Well, just taking that a step further, as a business person who might be listening to this, how can they get involved with B1G1? What would the curiosity would have to be there now? They'd be going, wow, I can make impacts in the world from my office and align my business to something greater. How can someone do that? How can a business owner get involved?
Should I go?
Who wants to take that? Yeah,
Masami, why not go? Because there's now so many ways now.
I was a business owner, right? Like, so I think I understand entrepreneurs and leaders in businesses. And it's so easy to go, oh, one day we will do. So B1G1 has to be every day and from today. So we make it simple and easy. So first of all, the B1G1 program over the years got structured in this way to create total effectiveness and transparency, which is that the initiative itself is run by the members, support of the members. So members contribute membership fee, and then that goes to, that's called movement fund, because it's actually investing in a better ecosystem and infrastructure together, right? So that allows us to build the platform systems and the project that gets broken down into micro units so that every cent, every dollar would have a measurable impact. And then we got tools and the widget counters that the members can use to embed the impact count. So everything is funded there. Then what happens is then every business can go, okay, when my business, I want to create these kind of impacts. And then that commitment, how much they can invest today into giving access to water, or education is up to them. So there is no specific things they must do, right? So any business can go, okay, I want to make act of kindness and contribution and impact in my everyday activity can join and be part of it and work together. So it's super simple. And, you could visit B1G1 to learn more or talk to some of our members because they are the ones who are the right people to guide these new businesses to implement this way of doing business. So PJ would be the good place to go.
I would be, yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I'm gonna share my screen here real quick.
Well,
and,
I was going to say the
put the
short answer to that
B1G1
question is
website
go
up.
where you're going now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And here you go. So this is the landing page for B1G1. And, if as a business person, if you're listening to this and thinking, man, this sounds really cool, I would like to get involved. Well, here you go. Just jump on the website, see how it works, click the join us. I mean, as Masami said, it's very simple to get involved. One thing that I think is worth continuing on is how you bring on projects to the platform. And this is really important for me, right? Because we've heard so many stories over the years about charities that really aren't charities and people that are doing, not the right thing with money they collect and so forth. And one of the things that I think is so important about B1G1 and what you're doing is that all of the projects, and you call them projects, they're on the website and available to do giving to, have been vetted. They've gone through a rigorous process of ensuring that they are what they say they are. And that for me was a huge deal, knowing that the money that I am giving to a particular project or sustainable development goal or whatever it is, was going to make its way to that project. And it was as on the label, it was for clean water projects or it was for education. Is there anything that you'd like to say in addition to what I've just said? Maybe expand on some of those things?
Well, because of what you said, there are, some also limitation, right? Like, so for example, we would love to have all of the projects that are recommended to us to be part of B1G1. But then because of that limitation, this is not a suitable model for all charities that are doing good work. Because it matters to us to be able to break down the project. So it's not about, we are going to do this good things, so let's raise money and then put the project in B1G1. So there are lots of things we cannot do as well. So the B1G1 project list gradually evolve and increase and build. And so this is where we are working together with our members, so we don't see B1G1 as a provider of solution to effective giving and then seeing you, for example, PJ, as a customer, even though you contribute to the membership, right? But the thing is, this is a collaboration because businesses joining us are also able to say, we want to also help solve this kind of challenges. And B1G1 currently does not have this particular program. So we want to recommend this project. And then over the years, because it's been 18 years of working, gradually we have evolved, but working together with the members and also even the project that we already work with. Often those organizations working with them also raise awareness for other important issues that we could help solve. So there is always this collaboration mindset that we are working together to build this ecosystem where every act of micro contribution coming from businesses around the world can help create a truly better world and a bigger impact.
Yeah.
Love that.
And I think you're right, PJ, with the stuff that goes on in the background that members never see, but they know it's there. That vetting just gives you that extra security of knowing that when you give, it goes where you thought it was going, and it does exactly what it said. And of course now. And by the way, those of you who are listening to this, I hope you've having a look at B1G1. It's kind of interesting, but there's also another way that we're looking at that now. Yes, it's so true that businesses make a difference, but families can as well. And so we've now opened that up so that there's now,
Yes.
and I think within a couple of days, actually, it'll be live. So there's now a B1G1 family program. So what you can do is little things like, instead of saying when something great happens in my business, something great happens in the world, you can now say when Johnny unpacks the dishwasher, 11 kids or whatever the number is get access to life-saving water, or when Sally does her homework, kids get access to education, and so on and so forth. So there's this lovely broadening going on as well right now.
I love that, and I know you mentioned the family program that you were that was coming up and you were rolling out at the last conference. And I love that. And I think, when I was a kid, my mother got both my brother and I to, do chores around the house and stuff. And we were rewarded with different things. And I wonder how this type of thing will influence the next generation of kids insofar as, empty the dishwasher, we give, hey, we're going to help someone in Africa with having access to clean water. Isn't that cool? And see what that does for the next generation coming up with their, I don't know how they feel about the world or whatever. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's an experiment in progress, but I love it. But let's pivot back to business for a second, if we could, and maybe just talk quickly about how, because I'm doing this now too, is you have this wonderful thing called B1G1 tokens, and you're encouraging businesses to involve their teams in all of this giving. So it's not just about me as a business owner saying, okay, we're going to do all this great stuff and I keep that all to myself. I am now involving my team in participating in the giving. So maybe talk a little bit about that. Who wants that one?
Well, I remember you saying to me, actually, after I got it at Hello, I think our next conversation was, oh, by the way, I'm involving, I forget the lady's name at the time, but I'm involving this person, and this person really loves it as well. Mm-hmm. And so what actually happens is you get your teams involved, and all of a sudden, it's not about the money, if you like, that the business is doing. It's about the impact that we're doing, and we all feel that. We all feel that. So we were writing something the other day that says, people may join a company for money, but they stay for meaning. And that, you, PJ, are a classic example of it. I mean, you're with your customers, your clients, you're involving them in it, and you're involving the team. And what happens is you get a totally different set of engagement metrics so that everybody's involved. And I, by the way, I've always said that kids actually get it. We think that we're the guys who get it, but no, kids actually get it in a sense better than we do. And similarly, when you're with teams, they're not just coming to work to get revenue for the business or salaries for themselves. Everybody gets this bigger purpose, and when we have this bigger purpose, it just changes how we feel about things as well.
Yes. I have had people who have become clients of my firm who were, shopping me online and looking at the website and ended up landing on that, Business for Good page. And that was one of the key things that they said, I looked at, because everybody is very similar in my space. And so that for them was the thing that got them over the line. They're like, well, you're doing this stuff, others aren't, and we like that. And so even if you're a business person listening to this, know that people may not say it, but they are looking for, I think anyway, nowadays, they're looking for businesses that are doing something more than just the run of the mill. They want to know that you're out there doing good work. And I think that's amazing. And I know a lot of our businesses that are involved in B1G1 are probably having the same sort of experience as well. So really cool stuff.
And I think it comes back to that joy thing that we mentioned earlier on. So when you and your team are feeling that joy, it and there's a very important word in there, feeling the joy. So it changes the way in which the business feels, and by osmosis, almost, that you can't help but let that radiate out and do great things as a result. So you're just such a prime example of it, PJ. I mean, yes, when people look at your website, which is just brilliant, and they'll see all these awards that you've won and all of that sort of stuff, and then they carry on down the page and they see, oh my goodness, look at what's actually happened, over
Yes.
1 million giving impacts as well. So it's great stuff.
And growing. And they'll now see the 2 million, that we're
there
aiming
you go.
for. Hopefully,
the
we'll
2
hit
million's
that
there,
sooner
and on
rather
the
than
side,
later.
it's just going up. Yeah.
What is next for B1G1? I think at the conference, what was the number that we set for a goal? It's a pretty big
1
number.
billion.
1 billion impacts. Yes. That is a huge number of impacts. And so how is that going? What was the number again, Masami, that you said earlier?
So today I noticed that we hit the 395 million impacts. So saying 1 billion seems like a bit ambitious, right? But the reason, PJ, that I think having this collective goal is so important, and then 1 billion impacts is so important, is not only it's a symbolic big number, but because of the fact that every impact, yours and many other businesses, all counted together. So we cannot hit that 1 billion if your impacts are missing, or because of your impacts, we reach 1 billion impacts. So that collectiveness is the part that is most exciting, because even your team member, who did something good in the business, and you celebrated that led to impact, right? That impact is counted in that 1 billion. And so that's why moving together, with a shared mission is so powerful, because then every business, every person feel empowered that they could do something today.
Mm-hmm. I love that. But what can a business do, or how should they embed a giving habit into their business? Like what's some best practice stuff that you've seen from some of the B1G1 community members?
Well, I think if I could just jump in on that with the goals, and whether we talk about the sustainable development goals or the individual goals, but typically what a business does, right? It will do its financial plans for the year and say, this is what we want to do. But what happens, as you mentioned, when we set impact goals, right, then that's something that people can get involved with every day. So, I was talking the other day to someone who runs a electrician's business in New South Wales, and they've got like about 100 people on the team. So it's more than just a small business, but they've got these tiny teams of like about 5 people who will go and do the installations and all that kind of stuff. And then every Friday they get together, right, as a team every Friday afternoon. And guess what happens? What happens in that meeting is they're showing the combined impacts, not but the combined impacts, and then they will reward, quote unquote, reward with some tiny little thing, the team that created the most impacts that week by virtue of what they did. And if you think about that for a minute, that is entirely different than every other electrical company, on the planet, right? And so you're seeing this whole thing that people, this whole joy thing, that's just a joy for the people that's coming out and letting them express who they really are as well. So I think it's just such an important thing. And you're a great example. There you are doing your heading towards your 2 million. And that's like really something. It's something you can talk about every single day,
Oh yeah. One of the things that we have done in the past to let our client base know that we're doing this is we've actually asked them to tell us what sustainable goals they would like to support themselves, right? Because everyone has a slightly different thing that they are passionate about.
Yes, they do.
And so when we did that, it really engaged our community. I haven't done that in a while. I probably need to refresh that, but it's something that we have embedded in our client onboarding process, is to say, this is what we're doing with our impactful giving, and we'd like you to help us to determine where our giving goes. So tell us what you want to support. That's just one way. Obviously, businesses can do things. Yeah. But the cool thing about it is people get involved, and they then can see that they're not just dealing with a financial planning firm or a wealth management firm. They're dealing with someone who is really out there trying to make impacts in the world. And I think that's what the important thing is with business is we don't just show up to work every day to solve problem. Well, we do show up to solve problems, but it's not just about solving problems and, then going home at the end of the day and Groundhog Day, just keeping doing that over and over again. It's about, well, what have I done today to change the world? And when we start talking about things like that, getting out of bed every day becomes a bit more of a, I don't know, an interesting proposition,
100%. I frequently think, PJ, that there are some, and perhaps too many people in the world where, running businesses or being part of businesses where they put their head on the pillow at night and they ask themselves this interesting question, which is that all there is? And the answer to that is no. There's all of these things, that you're joyfully talking about, and that's the key. That's a real key.
It is. Are there any final thoughts or things that you'd like to leave the audience with around anything related to B1G1 or the global goals or anything?
Who wants to take that?
Who wants to go first? Masami,
it's your turn.
In a few minutes.
Go.
Well, we are seeing extraordinary time, PJ, right now in so many ways. When we first started B1G1 in 2007, nobody was talking about sustainability or, even CSR, social impact. Today, there is a lot of awareness and the conversation around these topics too. But also today we are in a time where things like AI creates both risks and opportunities for all of us. And then there seems to be lots of big things happening in the world that the people feel that they care, but they don't know what to do about. So we are in this most extraordinary time. And I think what makes the biggest difference is a very simple humanity. And as human beings, what matters to each of us and to our family, if we find a way to act on that in a very human way, then that creates a greater opportunity for our businesses. Because today, even small business and a small team can achieve extraordinary results, but you have to have this alignment with who you are and what you stand for and how you deliver that every day. And the people who you work with, how do you create this alignment together so that we are actually operating at a higher purpose together? And so there's so much opportunity. But the most important part in this conversation today is that we can start today. We don't need to wait until one day.
That's so true. It's so true. And PJ, it's, by the way, thank you for making this possible. It's just so good being with you. And then that, by the way, I think that talks to another thing, and that is that it's all about connection, isn't it? That we have. And of course, when you think at Intrepid of all the financial things you do, and then frequently, and I'm sure this word comes up quite frequently, where we talk about legacy and and I heard a comment on that post the conference, by the way, which we last met, and I think it speaks well for all of you listening to us now, because we frequently think that legacy is what we leave behind, which of course it is, and many of us don't think about that often enough. So thank goodness there are people, PJ, you're there, kind of helping people think about that. But I heard this quote and recently, which I think is very appropriate for where we're at now, and it's this. This guy said, legacy is not what you leave behind, it's what you set in motion. And so the interesting question is, having spent all of this time with us today, and by the way, it's just been great being with you. What is it that we can set in motion? And Masami's answer to that, and B1G1's answer to that, and your answer to that is there's some tiny things that you can do, and those tiny things, just when we do them together, just have massive impact.
They do. And I was just looking at, and I'm just going to share it as a final screen view. This is my website's impact widget, which Masami mentioned earlier. And had I not been in that room when you originally presented B1G1 and said, you had me at hello, these impacts wouldn't have happened. And this is a source of great pride for me as a business, that we have made impacts in every single one of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is also one of my goals, is that I want to have impacts in all of them. Because I think, Masami, I probably intuitively knew this, but you really nailed it earlier when you said that, they are all related, and they truly are. And I will now think of it in that way. And so I want to say to both of you, thank you for giving me that gift and putting me on this journey and my business on this journey. And I hope for continued great things and relationship with both of you and B1G1, growing the community and all of it. So thank you for spending the time with me today on the Money Matters podcast.
It's been an absolute joy and a privilege, PJ. Thank you for making it happen.
Yeah, thank you so much for the part you play. And then the people even listening, you are playing a part in this, because by engaging in this space, we are actually making our world a better place.
Yes. And we want to show people how to do that, especially small business, because we will change the world.
We will. And we are. Thank you, PJ.
Thank you. Great way to finish, guys. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, you should do nothing else but do podcasts. Oh my God,
Well, it is something that I enjoy. I did a lot of them, and then I kind of stopped, and I'm like, I have to get back to doing this, because this is a great format to tell the story and all the rest of it. And I'm so thrilled that you both have made the time for me. The amount of gratitude I have for this is incredible. So I hope we have some good content there, and I'll share this with you guys as soon as I have the file complete and everything. And you can do with it as you wish to, put it out there, promote, whatever. Anyway, I'll do all of that. So
just
thank you.
Yeah. You probably can see I have a tear in my eye. Well, you may not be able to see. I have a tear in my eye. And very often, you have moments where you go, whoa, that was something else. And PJ, this was not, for me, it was not just, another podcast where you have the privilege of turning up. This was something else, thanks to you. Just amazing.
And also, just before we wrap up our conversation, separate part, So I think Clarissa sent you an email about the family program, because it took longer than we expected, but it's ready. But we're just doing internal access at the moment, which means that before we start, talking about it publicly and with also other members. And then we just wanted to have this small group of members from the conference, especially, who actually say, that's a great idea, right? If you could actually test it out first, and then look at that. And then, because you have then the referral code of your own, which you can use to gift that to others, right? And then in this case, you can go even beyond business clients, but the business clients maybe because, when you try to inspire other businesses to consider doing B1G1, sometimes when people think this is a business decision, sometimes people take long time to overthink too, does it work for my business? What happened to somebody else in my company? Or so this can be a great way to go here, you can do it anyway, as a person, and take it to the kids and talk about it. Or so that if it gave a flavor of the joy of impact creation to more people, removing this, is this a business person or not, then I think it's great. And but I want to learn from what happens for you, as well as these other founding family members. And then maybe maybe make a little tweaks here and there so that it can actually have a positive impact in boosting the collective impact. So yeah, so please let me know anytime if you had a thought to just try it out, and then you might see like a little glitch here and there too. But also if you had a what if thought, right? Simple thought, then please let me know.
Okay, I will.
Yes.
Thank you for reminding me of that. I did see that email, and I've got to say, at this moment in my business life, I am just going flat chat. And and Paul, you'll be very happy to hear this. I have an accounting practice that I have signed in basically a memorandum of understanding, whatever you call them, to buy. So I'm about to embark on the next journey.
You're acquiring?
Wow.
I'm acquiring, yeah. So
PJ.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's the next step, is to start acquiring accounting practices and do a bit of a roll up of those things.
But when you combine that with the other thing that we want to have a conversation with about, the whole legacy thing that you were talking about.
Yes.
And since then, the whole accounting thing, PJ, is so critical. I was sadly it was on WhatsApp, and so it wasn't recorded, but because of where I've been in that accounting space, that is changing so rapidly, and particularly with AI and so on. And so now you can do some really amazing things. Actually, funny thing, last week I was asked to write 2 forewords, right, for two new books coming out on the profession, and I think we're finally getting to the point where accountants realize, and you are going to drive this. I know you're going to drive it. That I used to say when we were doing the sessions with accountants that, your job is not to report on history. Your job is to help your selected clients create it. And you very specifically can make sure that happens because of where you've come from. Wow.
It's exciting times, and I'm sure as I go along, I'll be, if it's okay with you, I'd love to, give you updates and stuff on that, because I think that this industry in particular is ready for a massive change, and exactly what you just described. And I think there is so much work to do. So I can't wait to get this one done. I think we'll have it settled and probably start the integration process by sort of June, July of this year. And I hope I haven't bitten off more than I can chew, and I hope that I haven't misread what I think is possible in this space. We're going to find out, but I don't think I am.
To put it in your language, PJ, you've just hit a home run.
Okay, I love that. Good baseball analogy there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly so.
Thank you.
No. And if you wouldn't mind, keeping me close on that, and because some of the things you mentioned there, the impact on teams and all of that kind of stuff. There's certain things. And did you say this is just the start of that, or like it's
my hope? Yes, it is. It is the start of it, and my hope here is, one of my goals is to get to an enterprise size or turnover size of anywhere between 15 and 25 million. The only way I'm going to do that is by acquiring businesses and bringing them in and rolling them up. So, with the age of the accounting profession, a few other, interesting demographic issues going on, I think that opportunity to get a lot of smaller businesses sort of around that 1 million-ish size and bring them together is huge. And every client that I've ever had, by the way, that I've tried to integrate or offer some sort of outsourced accounting service has not worked because I don't have the ability to walk in an office and go, I need you to do this. You don't understand that this is where we're headed, and been at the mercy of some firm, coming back to me whenever. And that's unacceptable. And I've had enough. I'm going to buy a business so that they can't ignore the boss, and say, here is how we want to approach integrating all of this for clients, helping them along the journey of creation, not of looking backwards and going, that happened 2 years ago. Like, who cares, right? What can we do going forward? And bring it all together. So that's going to be huge. I'll see how it goes.
Oh, PJ,
I'll
that
probably
is.
call you late at night as
Are you
some night crying in the
are
fetal
you
position.
using are you using a broker to do that, or are you doing that
We are, yeah.
individually?
So this business that we found was through a business broker, and I think that broker was quite sharp and quite good. And there's a lot of practices up for sale now on some of these
Of
broking
course there are,
sites.
because they can't handle the change that's going on. They just
Yeah.
can't handle it.
The next step for me, though, is I am getting into some networking groups here in Sydney that are accounting focused. And once my baseball duties for this season are finished, I'll be able to start attending some events. and basically, I'm just going to be asking every single accountant I come across. I'm like, do you want to sell your business? Like, what are you thinking around that? And see what sort of feedback I get. So,
and when you said the network, what can I ask? What network was that you were thinking of?
Yes, there's a lady named, oh goodness, I've gone completely blank. Alex Quinn, I think is her name. She
Okay, okay.
runs, yeah, she runs like a networking group for like accountants, financial planners, finance brokers, and she has a monthly, I think it's a monthly get together in the city in Sydney.
Okay, great.
But she's kind of like a consultant to accounting firms. Like she is a trained accountant and stuff, but I think she saw the value in helping accountants be better business people. And so she kind of runs that consultancy now. And I've been to one of her events and there's a whole bunch of accountants in the room. And I, started talking to a number of them, and I'm curious to see whether I can. And I said to her, I actually said to her at this event, I want to buy accounting practice, and she kind of looked at me like, "Oh, that's a great idea," like, like no one has ever thought of this, right? But anyway, so that's one way. And another person suggested I go to the CPA group or CA, is it? Where did we have one of our events? It was in their office.
There's two competing groups, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
There's the
chartered accountants,
the chartered guys, CA. That's right. And they're the people who very kindly give us their space in Sydney and Melbourne, and we want to do more work with them as well because exactly the reason you're talking about. I mean, they just don't. they get trained in how to do all of these complex things, and now of course AI is doing the complex things, and all of a sudden they what they realize is this is actually, I mean, where's your skill? I mean, you've got this incredible skill financially, and you've got this amazing talent, this amazing insight for communicating human to human, and that's the thing that's missing in accounting firms. It really is, right? So for you to add that back in is, that is huge news, PJ. Huge news.
I'll just quickly ask you what your thoughts on what I'm about to say. So my view is the first person I'm going to hire for this accounting firm, if I hire another person, is I'm going to hire what I'm going to call a farmer. So it's a salesperson who is a farmer who will go to the existing client base and say, what do you need? How can we help you? Where are you lacking in knowledge or concern or whatever? And how can we help you bridge that gap? Because we now have all these other skill sets. We have financial planning, we have finance broking, et cetera.
Exactly.
And that person, I suppose there's two people, that person who's sales, and then I guess let's call him a concierge, someone who will sit between the accounting side of it and the client and go, it's like, welcome to McDonald's. How let me take your order. How can we help you today?
100%. 100%.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that those people exist now in the accounting profession?
You're totally on track. One of the things, when I was doing the accountants boot camp, which had 17,000 accountants come through that, you saw some people go, oh wow, and didn't do anything, and then you saw the others go, oh my goodness. And one of the key, you're so onto it, PJ, one of the key things that changed practices was the first action they took was to create someone in that firm who they called at that time client success manager. That's what they called them.
Yep.
Right. And so that was their focus, to do exactly what you're talking about right there. And that doesn't happen with accounting firms. It doesn't. It's like, send me your tax return.
I've had several, and none of them have ever done that. They always go, we're going to do tax planning and stuff, and then they never do it. And then I get to the end of the year, and I go, why do I have this tax bill?
Yeah,
where was the
exactly.
planning? Anyway,
So,
well, that's good. That's really good. Thank
are
you.
you looking at like roughly sort of $1 million revenue beyond that, or what are you looking at there?
In terms of the acquisition size?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think around that size. I mean, for me to, okay, so again, sorry, Masami, if you need to
Oh, no, no,
go or
no.
not interested in this, please
No, no,
feel
no.
free.
She's
No, no,
Paul and I are
no.
going to
I,
nerd out on this for a second. The way I sort of am envisioning this, Paul, is that I probably need to get to about 5 million of revenue, to 5 to 10, and then I can start to approach maybe some smaller private equity and start to look at, okay, how can I, sell a percentage, maybe 20 or 30% to generate some capital and maybe get a lending facility from a
Yeah,
private provider as opposed to the bank, to then really start acquiring and bolting on practices. The other thing I've got to do with this first acquisition is figure out what team members I don't have on my team that I will need to hire in or bring in to help with that whole, buy and integrate and improve process. So this next year for me, buying this practice, I'm going to use it as the proving ground. And then I'm going to go out and start hoovering up probably everything I can find in probably 750 to about 1.5. That seems to me to be the business size where they've got a team.
That's where the biggest opportunity is, by the way.
I think so, because the big guys don't want that yet. Like, the big players, the Grant Thorntons and stuff, they want to buy somebody that's probably got a $3 to $5 million, turnover.
Correct.
No one's really playing in this space of that sort of 750 to 1.5, I don't think. Maybe other firms are coming together in that, but I don't know that there's anyone like me who's saying, I'm going to go buy 10 of them, type thing. So that's the idea.
Well,
anyway.
the only people that are doing that is some of the accounting guys that might be quote unquote switched on. So they might be doing like 10 million or something and then acquiring behind them, but they've already shown they've got the skills to grow to 10. But most accountants, they just locked at that, they've plateaued at that particular point. And so then having someone like you who's got this, I get it at hello kind of thing. And doing, and being honored by, your colleagues in the finance business and stuff. PJ, I that's one of the most exciting things I've heard. I think that is, so the way I see that is very simple. I think the accounting firms need you, right? And the clients that are currently not being serviced in the right way because the communication channel isn't correct, they need you to. So the opportunity for you to do enormous things there is huge, absolutely huge.
That makes me feel much better. I have had my doubts, and I keep saying I think I'm onto something here, but then I was asked the question, why isn't anyone else doing this, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. We're going to find out.
Well, I mean, I remember before I got into the accounting space, although I was sort of into that space at Hewlett Packard, but when I was focusing on businesses and everything else, I remember being in this room. There were 400 people in the room, and I was talking to them about marketing and everything else for 2 days. One of the people in the room was a guy Masami met last year. His name is Rick Payne, and he and this was in the day. It was in the day when Rick was a smoker, and so was I. Right.
Okay.
So we went to the break, and of course, I couldn't wait to get to the break.
Right.
So we stood there, and I won't use the exact language that he used, but I will use something close. He said, "You're bleep stupid." And I said, "What do you have in mind?" He said, "No, listen very carefully to this." He said, "You're giving all these people advice and everything else, but they can only use that advice one-to-one for their businesses. That's all they can do. But I'm unique in this room. Why? Because I can take that advice and share it with, on average, 200 to 400 clients and change their businesses as well." Do you see that? And that was the day when I went back into, at the end of that program, I sat back in my then house in Paddington in Queensland and I wrote a 4-page, a 4-page direct mail piece and posted it to 6,000 accounting firms saying, we're going to do this thing that's never been heard of. It's called the Accountants Boot Camp. And by the way, your investment in it is those times $3,900, we said, for 3 days. And everybody said, you are stupid. You are out of your head stupid. 3 days later, I went to the mailbox because in those days you had to send in checks. That's all and seriously, in that one day, we sold that out. Right?
Wow.
So what that tells you is that there is this, opportunity to leverage, and what you're able to do. Oh my goodness, PJ, well, you can tell I'm very excited by what you were just talking about. Very
Thank you.
excited.
I am too.
Well done.
And
Whoa.
I know that this first one's going to be, fun and challenging. But I think if we can solve this problem, then the sky's the limit.
You can.
So
you can. I mean, take a look at what you've done in your phone now. Just go to your website, and I know you like looking at the goals and all that kind of stuff. But I like the little blue things there, all of the awards.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I will keep you posted on that.
I can see a lot of conversations happening between you. I just feel like these dots are connecting now, and Paul being in the space of accounting, even though he's not an accountant, but the influence and experience over that, and now like people like you, PJ, Paul, so admire you as the next kind of almost a generation of leaders, right? Like that, who have the opportunity to actually build on all of the things happening. So we're just so looking forward to seeing this.
And by the way, something interesting has happened in the past 10 days, which I'll let you in on. Masami's dad gets up very early. Yeah, he gets up very early in the morning. He just lives down there. He's literally down there, not far away. It's a 60-meter walk, and he gets up very early in the morning. And why does he get up very early in the morning? And I'm talking 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Every day. Why? Because he watches US baseball. and just recently, Netflix, I'm not sure, did you get it in Australia, where Netflix did this whole thing about the World Baseball thing, which was
the World Baseball Classic that's going on right now, you mean? Yeah. Yes.
Yep. And so here in Japan, the only way you could get it was on Netflix. Well, we had a Netflix thing, so he now has a Netflix account, so he can continue to watch it. But the person on the bottom of my screen right now was actually there to the baseball. And she was disappointed when Japan lost to Venezuela, I have to say.
The Aussies almost beat Japan as well. I think it came down to one play that I think maybe wasn't executed as well as it could have been by the Australians. And a lot of people say to me when we talk about baseball in Australia, they go, they're like, Australia plays baseball? I'm like, yeah, and we're really good at it. And we often say this about Australia, is we punch above our weight in a lot of sports, and we kind of do, But in particular with the baseball, it's so amazing that Australia can compete at that stage against really good baseball teams, and Japan's one of them, So,
but they lost was it the quarterfinal they lost, or the semifinal there?
I don't recall, but I mean, it's tough though. Like you think about all these nations that play baseball, and Japan and Korea are always up at the top. But you also have all these South American countries that put a lot of stars into the MLB. Venezuela and Colombia and Cuba, of course, and Dominican Republic, and even Mexico. There's so many good teams out there. Even surprisingly, like Italy and the Czech Republic.
That's amazing.
And Great Britain, even put teams sometimes, and have teams go into these things. So it's really cool. But it's one of those events that, the World Series is a very American-centric thing.
Isn't it?
But the World Baseball Classic is truly that. It is the World Baseball Classic. It's so cool. Yeah. Well, I'm
there
glad
you go.
you're. Have you been a fan of baseball, Masami, throughout your life, or are you just
Well,
starting to become one?
no. In Japan, actually, baseball is a big thing
Oh, it's
because
huge.
Oh
it's
yeah,
one of
huge,
Huge.
the, yeah,
huge.
one of the school also thing too. So we grow up like young kids will play baseball, always in the
Yep.
park
When
somewhere.
we go
And
to the gym, we just drive past 2 baseball fields on the way.
Okay.
and
Yeah.
also I think the most popular thing is the high school baseball. Actually, people from everywhere around the world will just like really come together in that season, and there's so much story and human drama around it. And I used to read comic books about baseball, right? Like
Oh,
then all the kids love stories and
I
everything.
love
So
it.
so there's that. But I've been away from that, baseball like a kind of world. So I didn't watch anything baseball for a really long time. And then Paul was more football person. So then, but being back here and spending more time in Japan and watching my dad watch, and then we were kind of
Yeah.
coming into this. So it's interesting. Yeah.
That's great. That's such a wonderful thing for you to be able to share with your dad, and that he's such a fan of baseball that he gets up that early in the morning to watch it. I mean, that's just
Nice.
awesome. That is so awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So anyway, so what a great conversation, PJ, and looking
Brian,
forward
thank you,
to
PJ.
the recording and what you do with it too.
I will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Well, enjoy the
PJ,
rest
you're
of your
amazing.
day, and enjoy the cherry blossoms. They come up what, April? Is that when the cherry
It's
blossom
not
season
too
is?
far. Yeah, it's
Coming
not
this
too
week,
far.
opening up
week?
this week, and then
Okay.
from next
Is that
couple of
right?
weeks
Because it
it's going
feels
to
too
be the
cold for them
blooming.
to open up.
No,
It's not too cold.
yeah. So some parts of Japan is now seeing the blossoms opening, but then probably like next weekend is regarded as a fall bloom. Like, and then
right,
so
okay.
we get to go to the park and then sit under the cherry blossom and eat food, and so that's what we do.
And it's a very short window, isn't it, that the cherry blossoms or
yeah,
the cherry trees
yeah.
blossom?
About
It's like 2 weeks or something?
couple weeks, then
Yeah.
they start falling. So
Okay.
that's the concept of Japanese wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi means like everything is a transient status. So all the things that bring joy in different seasons, it's most precious because we know it's not permanent, it's going. And then that going part is also part of wabi-sabi. So we are taught to appreciate, like both the good times and the challenges and the winters and yeah. So anyway,
It's all happening.
we are
I
here.
love
So.
it. I love it.
PJ,
Well, we'll
thank you
see
for
you
such a
one day in
great
Japan
start to our
too,
day.
PJ.
Amazing.
Please
Thank
come.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will hopefully see you both soon in person again in
Lots of
Sydney.
love. You
Can't wait
will.
to
You
see
will.
you. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.